So what we're going to do is, there was a comment that was posted on one of my videos, and it was from a person that proclaimed to be a real gang stalker, or a targeted individual. And that person, they made a comment. If I could bring it back up for you. It states that gang stalking is not spiritual. It's Zertsetzung, which would probably be something of a German word. We can go and check that out. But Zertsetzung, mind control, and DEW. And that's this particular person's input of what it is. I guess they have experience with it. And I responded, mind control in itself is spiritual. More so, how would you feel spiritually if you was hit with a direct energy weapon? Would you be in good spirit, i.e. elation? Would you be overjoyed? Or would you be in bad spirit, i.e. angered? So it would be spiritual. But overall, we will all have different interpretations and different experiences depending on those interpretations. Depending on how you interpret the gang stalking or the surveillance, you would have a different understanding of what it is. For some it's mind control, and there's others that may do experience DEWs, which, everybody might experience that, especially with the 5G towers and all these things everywhere, and us not understanding the extent of frequencies and how we are receptive to them. So you may have, those that experience direct energy weaponry and the effects of it. But what I did want to show you was, when they say mind control, when we're talking about spirituality, if we go biblically, if we go to 2 Timothy, let's see if it's right here, and it's not just it's not even biblically that I'm giving it to you. I haven't opened up a King James version or any other version, but what it states is, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, a spirit of fear, which paranoia would be amongst a spirit of fear. But God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. A sound mind is relating back to mind control. Mind that's under control of something other than itself is not a sound mind. So this is, the breakdown of it actually being a spiritual thing, because a sound mind is something that is spiritual. That is a spirit that God has given us. A righteous God anyway has given us a sound mind, not an insane mind. So that's not just to debunk a particular person, but it's to show you that sometimes this is what you will call a form of gaslighting, to make you believe that you are exaggerating or that you are mistaken. It's a form of gaslighting. And what they do have is, agents. They have agents that pose as targeted individuals or gang people that's under surveillance or gang stalked. But one thing that I pay attention to when anybody, when you're a real or a person that's really under, you know, watch and that experience it and that looks at it spiritually, you don't just these any and everybody that comment is somebody that you go and you check out their page and what they have to say or who they actually are. So you do click on names. I do click on names of individuals whenever I encounter them on my page. You know, this isn't something that I don't do. I don't take anything with a grain of salt. Like, I actually take it spiritually. You know, I take everything, I see everything spiritually as a spiritual being. But what the person is actually indicating is that, you know, when you go to their page, you know, they'll tell you, you know, first they'll say that they're a real gang stalking victim, you know, and you know, they'll give you, you know, videos that they created with them being gang stalked, and you know, with them being gang stalked. So they'll have their videos, you know, and they'll also tell you to watch out for fake gang stalking victims. And that's a deflective, that's a way to deflect. If you're claiming to be a genuine person, you would have to say that others are not genuine, you know. But, you know, the comment itself that was on my page had brought me back to the whole idea that, you know, some people are actually gang stalkers, posing as those that are being gang stalked, you know. But one thing that I noticed was that this particular person stated that anyone who mixed gang stalking with religion, spirituality, equals psyops, equals they are lying to you, you know. So this is something that, you know, this person is conveying as one that is being, you know, gang stalked. And, you know, there's parallels with this statement and another person's statement of, you know, what gang stalking is. When you go to this guy's page and you get certain things, you know, I went there yesterday, probably a couple of days ago, and I showed you, if I can bring up the guy's page, I believe his name was Gangstalking Reality, which is right here, you know. And when you go into the description of what the page is, you see that this person's thing there, anybody that talks about religion, spiritualism, is fake and lying to you. And as it states here, on this particular, these are two different people. You know, anyone who mixed gang stalking with religion, spirituality, is fake and lying to you. What, you know, as individuals, we tend to have our own, you know, our own usage and our own wordage. This is what makes us individuals, you know. So, you know, this is a telltale sign that this is something that doesn't deal with individuality. This deals with, you know, something else. So, you know, I stated before that when it was revealed to me that if they're not you, they are one of them. So if they are not you or like you, then they are one of them, which means that they are not like you. And if you was one of them, then you wouldn't be like you. So, one thing about me is I like to be me. I love to be me, and I wouldn't change me. I wouldn't change me to be like them. You couldn't. There's nothing you could do to change me from being me to make me one of them. So this is something that I wanted to point out. But when they're talking about spiritualism, or there's people that's giving you spiritual people, because they do have fake spiritualists as well. They have people that's in a cult that pretends to be spiritual, and they also have people that are in a religious group that may claim to be gangstalked. If you're in one of the biggest religions in the world, whether that's Islam or Christianity, then there's no way for you to be singled out and gang stalked based on your belief in a particular religion. That right there is a telltale sign that a person isn't gang stalked because of that. Because this religion is everywhere. It's in movies. It's in Hollywood. It's televangelists that makes millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars, and they're all over the place. And this is their belief. They believe in a particular religion. So there's no way. I wanted to show you. There's a particular person that does. You don't want to put anybody on blast, but what they say here, I am gang stalked everywhere I go because I hold the steadfast belief that Jesus Christ of Nazareth is my Lord and Savior. I'm stalked by the demonic spirit realm, and that first you have to understand that when you do follow Christ, you're automatically under attack spiritually. This is something that's given in the Bible. You will be persecuted for my name's sake. So this isn't something that you should come out and make a page about or even protest. This is something that you are required to endure as that. So when they're talking from that perspective of religion being fake and they're lying to you, then that can even be this particular person's perception of what gang stalking is. But you have to be real. If you're gang stalked for that, that means that everybody with that is gang stalked for that. So that'd be something that's common as opposed to uncommon. And that's what, when you go back to the statement, spiritualism, you also have a cult of people that proclaim to be spiritual, whether they're dealing with a form of witchcraft or anything dealing with anything spiritual, because witchcraft itself is a spiritual thing. And when you're talking about spiritualism or spiritual, there's not just one form of spiritual, because we do know that there's good spirits and there's also bad spirits. So that's what I wanted to to get into. That's what I wanted to get into, because it was stated that it's not spiritual, but as a spiritual being, or one that sees things spiritually, you do understand that it has a spiritual effect on a person, so it becomes spiritual. You know, and what I wanted to show you was that I was showed this was shown to me, and it was the gang stalking explained. Surveillance teams, watch lists, gang stalking, and targeted individuals. How it works, its effects on targets, what it tells you about the government, and its effects on society. You know, so society in itself, is the people, and the effects that it would have on the people is, we don't. You have to understand, we don't expose things. Exposure only piques a person's interest. It makes people curious, as to what it is. And you have to understand that all people aren't good people. So if you are unaware of it, and you is brought to your attention that people get paid from watching and monitoring other people, that that would spark a person's interest in joining in on the gang stalking to get whether what any kind of rewards that are offered by the programs, whether it's currency, gift cards. They say that you get gift cards, homes, cars, or whatever. These are things that people trade for, their morality. So this isn't something that is a uncommon thing. This is something that has been documented in the histories for ages. So for some, when you do bring awareness of certain things, it is not to expose. The righteous doesn't expose, we correct. We bring forth correction. So there's people that may need to be corrected for their wrongdoings. If they wasn't doing anything wrong, they wouldn't need any correction. So for most of us, this is our primary reason for speaking upon certain things. And I told you, like I said before, there's others that speak about it because their objective is to desensitize people to it and make it a common thing. But and that's, like I said, and that's society in itself, because you do have society, which is the people. Then inside of society you have secret societies, which is also the people. So we're not even going to get into the introduction of it, because even in the introduction they'll just tell you certain things that's going to be in the PDF file itself. Tracking, stalking, surveilling, the surveillance team app, surveillance team tactics, response in the target, realization, the confusion phase, and intense chronic stress, adaptation, coping mechanisms, attempts to be taken off the watch list. When you're talking about people that say that they can beat the program, and how to get off of the watch list, which is a possible thing. Other effects on the target: role of social media, mainstream media versus social media portrayals of watch lists, things pointed out by people being stalked, components of other than surveillance, lack of proper regulation, watching the watchers, the law, link with mass shootings and murders, others uses of the term, popular culture. So that's the table of contents of what the PDF file entails, what it's all included. So we have tracking. When you're talking about tracking, and one way that they track you is through mobile phone. So Primary tracking via the mobile phone states that targets are tracked primarily by tracking their mobile phone location using fake cell towers, most commonly referred to colloquially as Stingray. This tracking beacon will be passed on to the surveillance team, who will have the locations plotted on a mapping system on a custom-made surveillance team app. So they have an app that is used for tracking a particular individual. They have a app. There's multiple apps. Whether you're talking about the Citizen app or the Neighborhood Watch app, whether they're in Ring or other surveillance type apps, but they do have a tracking system set up. For me, I know that everything that's used to pinpoint a particular person's location is through the phone. So whenever I leave out the house, I do not bring my phone with me. So this is something that's common for you to know that your location is being tracked on a particular device. So if you are actually being tracked and you don't want to be followed and pursued while you're out and about, leave your phone at home. This is something that should go without even being said. Like, you should just know that they can follow you around through your phone. They can hear what you saying through your phone. They have cameras in your phone and microphones in your phone. So here you have figure 1. A target's location is being tracked primarily using fake cell towers. Depicted here are just 3 members of a surveillance team. However, these surveillance teams are much larger, consisting of 50 plus people. Using this tracking beacon, the surveillance team can efficiently stalk the individual by automatically detecting when they are on the move, getting satnet directions directly to the target, and determining when they are near one of their starred locations, so they can be at a location before the target gets there. So this is one way that they can be where you are going to be before you actually get there. And that is something that I've experienced. People being somewhere where I was going to show up at, and then you're wondering, how y'all get here? How did y'all know I was going to be here? So this gives you insight on how they are able to be at a particular location that you are destined to be at before you get there, by having what you call SatNet, which is satellite navigation, and using an app which communicates to the gangstalker, which then is able to place himself in proximity to you. So that is one of the methods used as far as locating a particular person. Secondary tracking using motion detection technology and manual updates. If the target realizes they are being tracked by the government on their mobile phone and leaves it at home, soon after, a motion detector will be installed in the street lamp outside their house. This will detect when the target is on the move automatically and will then notify the surveillance team. The surveillance team will then rush in with 3 or 4 people and start stalking them. That is some you gotta understand that how that is, how important a particular person have to be in order for them to keep continuously do this. So, when I leave my home, I don't frequent the same area all the time. So I may go down this road, I may go down that road, I may go down that road, and this isn't out of paranoia. This is out of, just being strategically moving, just to move strategically, have a strategy. If I'm going that way, I'll go around. But if I want to go straight down, I'll go that way. So this is just something that I do. But on one street that I go up, I would see these new devices installed on the telephone poles, and they have cameras on them. And I was wondering, like, why is they putting this up here in this area? In this area, nothing goes on in this area. Like, the area is completely, crime ridden. There's no crime in this community, and since I've been out here, there hasn't been one crime in that community. The community is one of the most peaceful places that you can actually be in, and I'm wondering, like, why are they putting this stuff up here? But it's because, they know that certain people leave phones at home that needs to be under 24-hour surveillance, So, and it's motionally, it has motion detection in it. It's motion detection. I'll probably give you a visual of that. I'll put a visual of it up so you can understand that, you're really not bugging. That thing does have motion detection on it. So, figure 2, backup tracking via a motion detector in the street lamp. Any one member of the surveillance team that spots the target will then manually update the target's position on the mapping system so that the rest of the surveillance team know exactly where they are. Street lamps are ubiquitous and afford a power source, lighting source, protection from the elements, and installation can be covert, as it's made to look like regular maintenance of the light bulb. The motion detection technology is also cheap. So motion detection is cheap as well. We're talking about low power consumption when, it's a light that can be turned on and off depending on whether it's being used or not, as opposed to a light that's constantly on. So motion detection technology is also cheap. Other forms of tracking exist, such as GPS trackers and automatic number plate license plate recognition, ANPR and ALPR, and other forms of motion detections, such as the front and back of unmanned parked cars. So this is something that you would 9 times out of 10 see if you are being under surveillance, is the light poles in your community or wherever you are at or frequent. They'll have motion detection technology implemented inside of them. So the fundamental significance of automated tracking. This automation of tracking people has been fundamental to the evolution of individual investigators into surveillance teams, as they do not have to wait around manually detecting when someone is on the move. Previously, manual tracking by individual investigators, boom, you see the car light, and now all the members of the surveillance team are tracking the same individual. So each one used to track a particular individual, but now they all track, one. They're able to track the same individual, and that's the evolution of it. Before, that technology, it was only limited to, one car being focus on a particular individual. Now it's all cars that can, target an individual. So the evolution of individual investigators into surveillance teams. So this is something that evolved from an individual investigator into a surveillance team. Previously, individual investigators would wait around and manually detect when an individual was on the move. That individual would be followed by a single car. Now, due to the automation of detection when someone is on the move, the individual investigators are free to roam about permanently. When one target on the watch list goes on the move, they will line that route or that route of that individual. They will go into the line of that route. Other technology factors contributing to gang stalking. Many of technologies have contributed to the evolution of gang stalking, such as apps, mapping systems, camera technology, and increased bandwidth with 5G, which allows potentially for the live streaming of people in HD. So the 5G gives you the ability to be live streamed, to a particular server, and then you have those apps which connect to the server from the Stingray operation, which is the tower system, which probably was the means for initiating the 5G into phones, the mobile phones, apps, certain apps that's on a particular phone, mapping systems, satellite navigation, covert HD cams, 5G, motion detection, night vision goggles, and thermal imaging. The thermal imaging deals with being able to see behind doors and behind anything that a person may be standing behind and what their actions are, while you're using the thermal imaging. Technologies that have contributed, this is figure 4. Technologies that have contributed to the evolution of gang stalking. This technology means it's cheaper and more efficient than ever to track, stalk, and surveil people. Whereas before it was drug dealers, terrorists, and hardened criminals being followed. Now, as it's become so much cheaper and more efficient, people with no criminal history whatsoever are being placed on watch lists in blasé fashion. So, this is something that you have to note, that before it was drug dealers, terrorists, and hardened criminals, that was being followed. And again, when we go back into, drug dealers, the drugs normally have a source. And being that you are involved in the drugs, they will 9 times out of 10 follow the drug dealer. Because again, drugs was an experiment on the people. So the people need an outlet to the drug, which the drug dealers served as. So it was only right that the drug dealers being watched would give a respondence of the drugs and the effects of the people that are using the drugs. So, that would be the reason why drug dealers are so, important for the surveillance, serial versus parallel stalking. The term gang and gang stalking evokes an image of a street gang all following someone in parallel, when in fact the gang is a large surveillance team who follow the target mostly in serial, i.e. taking it in turns to stalk them along their route with a frequency of perhaps on average one new stalker per street. Surveillance teams will consist of at least 50 people. For example, a city, the member the members of the team will take it in turn to stalk a target that is on the move, street by street or location by location. The stalking will be done mainly in serial, i.e., they will line the target's route in a pass the baton fashion, though it can be oftentimes be in parallel, i.e., multiple members of the surveillance team are surrounding the target at any one time. Potentially, there can be dozens of members of the surveillance team surrounding one target at any one time. Like there can be dozens of members, like there can be dozens of them, just around you. But the guys of the surveillance team, in order to attempt to make the stalking covert, the members of the surveillance team will be branded as regular members of the community, such as taxi drivers, delivery drivers, milk floats in the early morning, motorbikes with L plates, joggers, cyclists, dog walkers, etc., and will try to blend into the rest of the community. The vehicles used are real company vehicles, such as taxis, that the company running the surveillance team will be paying the local company to use. Any type of vehicle or person that would be out and about traveling all over the place is a candidate for the disguising of the surveillance team members. This disguising allows the members of the surveillance teams to hide in plain sight, hidden in plain sight. Any type of person or vehicle which would have a reason to be out and about driving all over the place will be a candidate. The members of the surveillance teams are mostly adults, but may also include young people, i.e., child spies. So they do have, children that can be used as potential gang stalkers, because when you're dealing with, online gaming, everywhere you go, you are to be, surveilled. So for me, I use, the Meta app, the Meta headset, and I'm aware that there's people that are gang stalkers on there as well, and you can identify them by their request to be amongst your circle, and sometimes it's their conversation or what they're trying to get out of the information that they're trying to get out of you. Most of them, sometimes they may have children that are in certain games, and they have certain or privy to certain information about people. Then you also have drug addicts that are on these particular apps, and they use drugs as well while on the app. But the thing is, you use these things. This is one of the things that I use. It's called the Meta. This is the Meta 3. And this is the reason why you might see, the bags under your eyes. It doesn't come from you being haggard and you not getting no sleep. You're letting it's getting to you. Oh, we're breaking him. No, this comes from this thing on your face can put pressure on your eyes, and it can make your eyes puffy. This is one thing that I acknowledge from it. But on this particular thing, you'll see a lot of people in here. This is an alternate reality. This, like, in what you want to say is that when you're dealing with virtual reality, it comes from another reality, which is the physical reality, and it's based off of your dreams. A dream state would be another reality. So these are dimensional things. This is a dimension, and when you're outside of it, you're in another dimension. So we're talking about being multi-dimensional. And like I said, this is technology, and this technology is based off of something that came from thought, and anything that comes from thought is actually spiritual. So again, it's a spiritual thing. But in this particular device, you notice people um, being, on a surveillance team. So they have surveillance teams that also get into the device with you. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere, But that's just what it is. You also got more of them. Like, you got dozens of these. You got these things. You got these things by the boatload. You got them. You got them everywhere. But that's what these are. You know. You know. Their headsets. That's not just only a gaming thing. That's a social thing. So there is definitely not a lying thing. It's real. They have spies everywhere. So the fact that they are made to look like regular members of the community is why it is sometimes referred to as community stalking or community harassment. They never have a real purpose for being near the target, only a fake one. So they have regular cars, taxi drivers, delivery drivers, unmarked vans, ambulances, milk floats. Even though I haven't seen a milk float in America in so long, empty minibus, motorbike with L plates, scooter riders, cyclists, joggers, dog walkers, mechanics, child spies, loiterer. So anybody can be somebody. And like I said, if they're not one of me, then they're one of them. So that can be anybody that's anybody. Only thing I know is that I wouldn't be involved in it. Surveillance role play, street theater. When trying to blend in, they will often act in order to appear convincing. A fake taxi, for example, will pretend to have passengers in the back of the taxi when they are actually also members of the surveillance team. A fake taxi will also drop passengers off and pick them up in order to try to create the illusion of being real. Another person might be standing in the middle of the road with a phone to their ear, pretending to be on the phone. Another person may be near the target with the car bonnet flipped, pretending to fix their vehicle, whatever a car bonnet is. Maybe it's, I don't know. The target notices the unlikely nature of this often very bad acting. It's bad acting. These are, actors that, are, that's why they call it street theater, because, these are, merely actors, and you would notice it if you are aware of it, you'll pick up on it. And one of the reasons why I think it's being widely discussed now and not before is because of the advanced technology that we're in possession of. We're able to pick up on certain things more faster and more frequent than we would before. There was the access to cell phones and things like that, or the internet. So now we're able to, research certain things and see other things that we wasn't able to see before. So you have, you know, um, the targets noticing the unlikely nature of this often very bad acting and how their world has suddenly changed from how it used to be in terms of traffic flow, and unlikely and strange things happening all along their journey, and most commonly refers to this continuous acting all along their route as street theater. So that's, the street theater part of it, the acting part, you know and this goes even into, social media. Social media, it's on, Facebook, it's on, YouTube, it's everywhere. Still a form of street theater when you have people that make videos and, act a certain way, but they're really not that. That's a form of street theater. you know Rotation of the surveillance teams around the country. It's likely that someone being stalked will attempt to track the number plates of the cars stalking them. In order to prevent this, the surveillance teams are rotated around the country so that on each day there is a new surveillance team operating in a particular area. If the target attempts to track the number plates, therefore, it will be practically impossible. The effect of this rotation is that over time, the individual will have literally thousands of stalkers going through the middle of their life. So that is, the effect of the rotation is that, you'll run across thousands of stalkers, like thousands of them. Color coordination and hand signals. Members of the surveillance team will sometimes color coordinate themselves, such as having mostly red or white vehicles, or all wearing items of red clothing. They will also use very subtle hand signal gestures to communicate with other members of the team, for example, indicating the target's positioning. Hand signals are a common form of communication in many industries, and everything from police and military to sport referees to crane operators, as they are subtle. These hand signals may only be visible when recording the members of the surveillance team with a camera with optical zoom. So, even, hand signals, for me, you have to understand, when you're not one of you, you're one of them. So if you always see them, on social media and even in public, when they show this one sign, for me, you're one of them. You're one of them because you see everybody, doing it. It's a certain hand signal that if you did want to know who is all a part of the gang stalking, remember, it's society. And society itself is people that share something in common. It's you have to be amongst the people with a certain interest that's in common. So when you do see people from all different walks of life and they're, doing that, that is a telltale sign if, a person is a gang stalker or not, and or a candidate for gang stalking. First you have to have an interest, that would separate your ability to not be involved. You have an interest. What is it? Money? Is it drugs? Is it this? Is it, what are you interested in that, we can use to gain your trust in this program or in, this community? But for me, that hand signal, on social media, everywhere, it's that. It's that. It's one of them. Whether we say it's you know Freemasonry, whoever it is, Illuminati, Freemasonry, whatever. But yeah, there are not enough CCT cameras to follow an individual 24/7. So this is CCT cameras used as an adjunct. There are not enough CCT cameras to follow an individual 24/7, but they are linked in with the mobile surveillance systems and are used as an adjunct. If the target on the watch list manages somehow to evade surveillance, they will be picked up again where CCTV cameras are located. So CCTV cameras are, more so used to track potential targets and to keep them under surveillance. This is what I see because of the way that certain crimes are captured on CCTV and how they're all over the place, and people that tend to get away from certain things are able to be traced from one camera to the next camera, from that camera to the next camera. So that's something that I always was skeptical about, is the CCTV, surveilling. The purpose of gang stalking is to continuously surveil the target as they go about their daily business. This is achieved via covert cameras in, for example, the front and back lights of the surveillance vehicle, covert body-worn covert cameras, and also smartphones pointed in the direction of the target. These cameras are HD and via 5G can transmit a live stream of the illuminated target back to a control center. So we have the cameras in a car locating a particular target, and then that target is being watched at a control center. These are what you will call control centers, and that is how you are being viewed by those that are behind the scene watching you. It's not the particular people that are recording and following you, but it's a control center where your activity is important to be followed at. It's like this is the particular place where everything is being recorded, and them capturing all of your activity is important to the people that's watching, not those that are recording. A control center to which the imagery is transmitted. This is figure 6. The purpose of the stalking is to continuously surveil the target. Here, a target is illuminated and recorded using covert cameras in the headlights of a vehicle. This gets transmitted live back to a control center where they have imagery and tracking data of various targets who are currently on the move. So that is that. Your whereabouts is being transmitted to a control center in real time. As you're moving about, as you're going about your daily activities, whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's going to work, whether you're going to the basketball court, whatever you're doing is being transmitted to a control center. Illumination of the target, which is called brighting, As cameras are not as good as the human eye at picking up low light images, the targets are usually illuminated by various forms of light sources: vehicle headlights, flashlights, body worn headlamps, etc. The target will, particularly at night and even during the day, notice they are being brighted continuously. Sometimes members of the surveillance team will use existing lighting in the environment to illuminate the target, such as jogging past the target as they walk under a street lamp. That is, what they call brighting. You know, types of brighting. In order to live stream a good image, the target is brighted. This is usually with a car maneuvering in such a way as to shine its very bright headlights on the target. Other forms are flashlights, headlamp lights, environmental lighting, and occasionally smartphone lights. These lights are usually extremely bright and significantly brighter than, for example, an average set of headlights. So, maneuvers. Vehicle stalking individuals. To capture an image of the target, a vehicle needs merely to be pointing towards or away from the target. So here you would have examples of vehicles maneuvering when stalking an individual. You would have how they pull up on the curb, slow drive by, like slowly drive by, wait wait on the side street for you, wait on the peripheral. Switch headlights on as target walks by. You have the U-turn. You have the park away from. You have the rush in. The trail of cars. So examples of vehicle maneuvering when stalking an individual: in addition to cars driving continuously slowly past them, the individual will be forced to walk past headlights from a car which pulls up in front of them or is waiting in a side street, will have cars doing U-turns near them, and will have cars waiting on the periphery of the target's vision to see which street they turn down next. The cars may park away from the target so they are recorded with the rear cameras. A common experience is no one being outside. That's a common experience, is no one being outside. Then, as soon as the target leaves their house, 3 or 4 people and or vehicles will appear in close proximity to the target within 30 seconds to 1 minute. The target will also regularly experience trails of 3 to 4 cars driving past them and sprawling off the different roads to cover different exit points. The target will also notice that everywhere they go, there are idling cars with idle people in them. That is, that's true. I remember one time I pulled up to a Walgreens and, I did my own psychological experiment. And I pulled up into the driveway. I pulled in there erratic. I pulled into the parking lot and I hopped out the car and I popped the trunk. And as soon as I popped the trunk, it was at least around about 5 cars that just pulled out of the driveway, in sequence. They just all just pulled out of the driveway. They just all pulled off, like I was about to get crazy and just, and that was funny. And I noticed that was, gang stalking in real time, that I was able to catch them, and they was people was just doing doing their job, just doing their job, but nobody wants to, get into anything, any physical thing, you know, especially when, you know, these particular acts are coward, and you know, they're sneaky in their actions. So these aren't real stand up or brave and bold people. These are, you know, mouse like, cowardice like people, you know, and they know that their actions are, you know, coward like, you know, because even when going back to the story in Judas and the Black Messiah, when they had the particular person working against Fred Hampton, he knew that his actions was, you know, that of a coward. He knew that, you know, he was being, you know, if he got caught, then he may suffer, you know. So yeah, individual stalking individuals. You got the individual stalkers, the physical stalker, loiterer, pretend home or leaflet drop, you know. So this is figure 9, example of individual stalking individuals. Individuals will experience other individuals physically stalking them and loitering near them with no purpose, only a fake purpose. That's why I tell you, you know, on the meta, there's people that want to be in your circle that really don't have a reason to be in your circle. But once they know that you may frequent a particular app, and this app has a way for them to infiltrate it and download the app and then request you as a friend, now they have a purpose of being amongst you, and they have actually access to you through that particular app. So one of the strangest forms of stalking is when walking in the very early hours of the morning. These stalkers can sometimes pretend to live in a house near to where the target is walking, walk into the driveway of this house, fiddle with their keys as they are fumbling about. Then when they think the target is out of sight, leave that driveway about 30 seconds to 1 minute later. They may also deliver a leaflet as role play, but only to that one house. You know, so that's you know, them mimicking the actions of actual neighbors, or, you know, workers of a restaurant, maybe dropping off leaflets to the restaurant, or loiterers, just people just, you know, standing around and about and just gathering, you know, intel or just the whereabouts of a particular person. So examples of individuals writing and taking imagery. You have the torch flash, you know, you have the headlamp flash, you have the cycle flash, the scooter flash, jog under street lamp, you know, fake phone call, phone tilt, you know. But all of these things you will experience in some form if you are on or under surveillance or on a watch list. And, you know, these are just, you know, some of the things that you will actually see, you know, in order to get good imagery of the target. The surveillance team member will often bright the target. This can be with a torch, headlamp on a bicycle or scooter with a very bright light on the front, or it can be by using existing lighting environments such as jogging past the target under a street lamp. They may also utilize their smartphone camera by pretending to be on the phone and recording the target through the camera, or pretending to use the smartphone for something else, then subtly tilting the camera in the direction of the target to take a picture. You know, So this is vehicles, stalking vehicles. So this is when your vehicle is being stalked. You know, this is when your vehicle is being stalked. So, they can stalk you on foot and in vehicle. So, examples of vehicles stalking vehicles. Vehicles may be stalked by pulling out in front of the target's vehicle so that they can be recorded using the rear cameras. If the target goes on a journey, a subset of the surveillance team will split off and form a smaller team to follow them. This may be noticed and described by the target as being continuously surrounded on a motorway by the same groups of cars. So this is, a form of, stalking while, you may be going on a trip somewhere or a long, ride somewhere. You may experience different cars, pulling up on you, then turning off, then more cars pulling up on you and turning off. But they're all actually recording you through cameras that they may have in the car, in the headlights, in the tail lights, or wherever. So, here's the surveillance team app, which is the reason why you are sharing this particular thing. This was shared, this was shown to me, and I said, okay, maybe I could elaborate on it some. So I'm pretty much sure there's people that have access to this that may have wanted to share this and probably even spoke about it, but I haven't seen anybody speak on it. And because you're not searching for too many people with that type of information, because like I said, that there's some that that's set up as you, but are one of them. So this is one of the reasons why I'm mindful about receiving certain things from certain people. So the surveillance team app. Surveillance teams have custom-made apps which are fundamental to the tracking, stalking, and surveillance. What follows is a depiction and description of what the surveillance team app will look like and how they will function. So the app will look something like this. It will look like this. Not saying that this is how the app actually looks. It will have profiles. It will have the target. It will have nearby locations, messages between this target and that this particular stalker and that stalker. They'll be able to send and relay messages, to and from each other. And you have the cameras, whether they're the CCTV or other cameras that they can access, even the phone camera on the particular target's phone. You have the settings on the particular app. Then you'll have nearby targets, all the targets in proximity, and where they're at and how far you're away from them. Then you'll have the live map of the area that you frequent. Then you have the step stalking job to get SavNet directions, like it would be a GPS that brings you to the location, and to update position manually. If you can't track them, you'll have a way for you to update the position manually. Like give them the coordinates manually. If they're at a particular store, you can say that they're approaching the gas station. They'll be there in at least around about a minute to 2 minutes. So, you update the position. Um, so this is figure 12, which is a depiction of a custom-made surveillance team app. The home page of the app contains profiles for each target, a list of nearby targets, a messaging system for the surveillance team members to communicate with each other, and live camera feeds of, for example, the front and back cameras on the surveillance video. If the user selects nearby targets, it brings up a list ordered by proximity. If the user clicks one of the targets, they are presented with a map of the target's exact location, commonly frequented locations, so the surveillance team member can be there before the target gets there, and various options including getting SAFnet directions straight to the target. The app can also detect automatically when the target is on the move using the tracking beacon. It can also have a feature whereby if the target leaves their phone at home, the target's position can be updated manually. All it takes is for one member of the surveillance team to spot the target, and they can then update the target's position on the map so everyone in the team knows where they are. One of the buttons is Accept Job. If this button is clicked, the surveillance team member will be expected to travel close to the target and surveil them using the covert cameras, the footage of which will be transmitted back to a control center using 5G. Once the user finishes the surveilling, they will end the current job and find a new target to stalk. Surveillance team tactics. Surveillance teams will often have trails of 3 to 4 cars which sprawl off to cover different exit points that the target may take. Other tactics include, if the target leaves the local area, a subset of the surveillance team will split off from the main team in order to continue to track the target. This may be described by a target as being, for instance, surrounded on a motorway by vehicles. If the target goes to a large area, cemetery, forest, etc., they will form a boundary line of spotters on the main roads around the area that the target is in and wait for the target to cross that boundary line so they can start being stalked again when they leave that area. If the target takes a regular route and seems to disappear each day at the same location, this could be if they nip down an alleyway each day when the surveillance car is out of sight. More and more role players will be placed at that location each day, up to dozens at the same time, until they figure out which route the target is taking. That is, like I said, that's some work, man, to keep tabs on a person, just to keep tabs on a person. That is some work, So, response in the target. So here we'll have, how, the target's response is to be to a certain or a reaction that the target is to have. The effects on the target's life is devastating. The duration of being surveilled is often exceedingly long, being years, decades, or even if the parents are under continuous surveillance from birth. Realization. Numerous steps are taken to make the surveillance covert. Branding of the members of the surveillance team, surveillance role play, rotation of the team, etc. Even so, the target will likely quite quickly realize they are being followed. This is due to the cumulative effect of lots of smaller things happening to them all along their journey, which will give them a sense that something is not right. So, Even though it's to be a covert thing, at some point, because of, you know, minor details that can't be overlooked, they will come to realization that, I'm being watched. They're watching me. Why? Who the hell is that watching? So this is one thing when I first made the targeted individual video. You can go into that. I believe that was at least around about 3 or maybe 4 years ago. And I stated something of that effect. Like, why is there, people that seem like they're, you know, being gang stalked when you can sense that they are, a part of the gang stalking. But I stated something like that. You would probably have to go back and watch it, or I would even have to go back and watch it, because I do go back and watch some of my videos that I posted from, you know, um, earlier times. So, as an analogy, when someone is communicating, the message they are conveying may be based on the cumulative effect of lots of things, such as the words they use, their body language, their facial expressions, the amplitude and intonation of their voice, etc. It's the cumulative effect of all these things that allows someone to understand their message. In the same way, it's the cumulative effect of lots of smaller things that can contribute to the target being able to almost instantaneously approximate who are real people and who are surveillance team members. So, like I said, it's the cumulative effect of lots of smaller things that can contribute to the target being able to almost instantaneously approximate who are real people and who are surveillance team members. So when you are aware of surveillance team members and you start to pick up on their demeanor, their ways of actions or communicating, you'll be able to pinpoint them any and everywhere. Like I stated, I see them in the metaverse, and it's either you pick up on them instantaneously. Like if you was to go into a particular app and meet somebody, genuinely, and those particular people were genuine, you would pick up on that. But then if you went into a particular app and you were to encounter somebody, you would instantaneously know if they are part of or a gang stalker, or are they, genuine. So it's the cumulative effect of the smaller things that you pick up on. So parked cars will switch on their headlights just before the target walks past. Other cars will be going in and out of streets near the target as though they are lost and are making ostensible driving mistakes in order that they can surveil the target. Cars will be pulling up on the curb near the target. Other cars will be doing U-turns near the target everywhere they go. There will be vehicles idling with idle people in them and headlights on. They will drive slowly past the target. On every street the target goes on, even on back streets, there will be someone with some kind of very bright light ready to flash it towards the target. Other cars will pull up on the periphery of the target's vision with no purpose, idling with headlights on. None of these people will be acting normally. So they'll not be. This will not be a normal acting thing. This isn't something that by hapstance that I just made this U-turn. It'd be a coerced or U-turn that's made by acting or acting that U-turn out. There is a higher traffic flow than normal on every street, and particularly around the target. There will be people waiting to see which street the target goes down next. There will also be idle cars switching on headlights just before the target walks by, waiting on the target street with headlights on just before the target leaves their house. If they have detected they are about to go on the move, turning into and driving slowly past the target when they get back to their house. Vehicles pulling up in the same park that the target is in. There will also be a lack of genuine emotion behavior in people. Normal, genuine behavior might be getting home from work, slamming the door due to being stressed and going into one's house. A kid cycling down the road singing to themselves without a care in the world. A car listening to loud music driving fast past the target without any care about the target whatsoever. Two acquaintances meeting in the street and their faces lighting up with genuine emotion. The people doing the surveillance do not emote whatsoever, and in their attempts to appear normal actually tend to appear like zombies. They also rarely show any eye contact or genuine facial expressions. Even though the surveillance team will try to vary the types of surveillance techniques on the target, the same patterns and techniques will be used again and again, and it will still be obvious to the target as all of a sudden their world has changed. If the target is out and about every day, within a week they will know they are under some form of surveillance. This is the confusion phase, the intense and chronic stress. So here we again, when we're dealing with stress, stress is something with a spiritual that takes a toll on your spirit, on your mental well-being as well, and your physical well-being. You can stop eating, you can stop sleeping, you can put your body into overdrive and burn yourself out with these thoughts. And these thoughts is all here and explained. Once the target knows they are under surveillance, they will become very confused about what is happening to them. The specific reason why they are placed on a watch list is never explained or justified. So these things aren't explained to you. We're going to watch you, for XYZ reason, and we're going to follow you everywhere you're going for XYZ reasons, and the reason why is because so it's never explained or justified. It's just something that you come to realization of after a certain period of time. So these are thoughts that a person may have when they realize they are being under surveillance. Am I about to be assassinated or kidnapped? Why do they need to stalk me on every street? Will they refer me to a mental health service? Who is stalking me? Should I go to the police? What are my rights? Should I tell people close to me? Why am I being stalked? How are they tracking me? How are so many people involved? Should I mount a legal challenge? How do I prove it? How did I end up on a watch list? Why doesn't probability diminish over time? When is it going to end? How is it going to end? Did I upset the wrong person? Predictive policing. All these thoughts is interconnected to each other. I'm pretty much sure if you was to, read them in order, you would see that these are all things that are pondered in sequence. in sequence. So the target may seriously consider they are in danger of being kidnapped or assassinated. Considering the amount of resources being devoted to stalking them, they will also wonder if they should go to the police or if this will make it worse, due to most people reporting that they will try to refer the target to a mental health service rather than admit to the gang stalking. They will also wonder if they should attempt to explain it, prove it to the people around them, or if they will then just be accused of paranoia or delusion. They may also wonder if they should mount a legal challenge, and if so, how they might go about collecting the evidence necessary. In addition, the target will wonder, why does the probability that someone is doing something wrong not diminish over time? Also, why, if they have tracking information, do they need to stalk that individual permanently on every street? Initially, they will not be believed by people close to them, and so the target will lack support from people close to them. These people are likely instead to believe that due to the unlikely nature of being stalked so intensively by so many people, and the perceived strange and erratic behavior of the individual, that they may be suffering from paranoia or delusion, and may also think they are arrogant to think that so many resources would be dedicated towards stalking them. They may say things to the target such as, "I hope you get the help you need." This lack of support may add to the stress. Adaptation and coping mechanism. Once the target has accepted that they are on a watch list and have a basic understanding of it, they will likely develop coping mechanisms to limit the harm of being stalked. This will include staying indoors, such as to limit the stalking. In general, the target is likely to become socially withdrawn. The target may describe the surveillance team as having stolen the best of me. Wearing headphones when outside so as to try to block out what is happening. Never wear headphones, especially outside in this day and age. I wouldn't wear headphones. If I did, when I do see people wearing headphones, I like to tell them, like, "Yo, son, be aware of your surroundings. Yo, take that off." Not just because they might have an issue outside, it's because other people may have an issue outside. Anything like a car could jump the curb, and so these are things that you are aware of. Never wear headphones outside ever. Developing a safe space where they can spend time without being stalked, such as in a garden or workplace. Leaving one's phone at home. This is something that I just do. I leave my phone at home, and not because you don't care anything about people calling you. People don't call me, and that's one of the reasons why I was able to know that I was being gang stalked, or something was going on. Is because I'm the go-to person for a lot of things. Because if people don't know certain things, they would know I'll be the first person they call. After I started to notice, that people wasn't calling and people wasn't interacting with me, because you do have good insight to offer people, and it's really good, genuine, because it comes from you genuinely giving that support. If you don't know it, you'll find out for them. So once I started noticing that people was avoiding calling me and wasn't calling me or contacting me, and even on social media people wasn't engaging, I was like, yo, something is going on behind the scenes. So that is one of the ways that I was aware of that particular that tap on my shoulder, the cumulative things was the tap on the shoulder, you know. So, you know, leaving one phone at home to make it more difficult to be tracked. Otherwise, they will always know exactly where the target is. Then go into a large area, particularly at night, such as the cemetery or forest, which is likely to provide some much needed short-term relief from stalking. So, you know, they have people that go to areas that aren't um, um, under a certain watch, and just to feel a sense of peace. You know, like the forest doesn't really have cameras and stuff in there unless they start putting them out there, or you know, cemeteries unless they start putting them out there. You know, so you know that's the adaptation. You know, and the coping mechanism. You know, me, like I said, for me, it doesn't even bother me. So, you know, go ahead, you know, there's the attempts to be taken off the watch list. The target will contend with how to end the stalking. If they try to wait it out, this is unlikely to work as people report being stalked for years, decades even. If they go to the police, they are likely to be referred to mental health services rather than the police admitting to the existence of gang stalking. If they try to eradicate it by moving to a different location within the same country, it is highly likely to start up again soon after moving, as these programs seem to be nationwide. If they contact other government departments, they may face a wall of bureaucracy, and those government departments are unlikely to understand the stalking. You know, and when you're talking about bureaucracy, you're talking about people that only understand what's written and what's in front of them on computers, so they don't think outside of what's written. If gang stalking is not a written code on it, they don't understand it at all. You know, so these are people that are office or bureaucrats, you know, so they only understand what's written. You know, they're by the book. They're by the book. You know, so if gang stalking isn't something that's in the book, they don't understand it. So that's what they mean. If they try to convey to the surveillance team that they know they are being stalked in an attempt to get them to stop stalking, it is highly unlikely to work, as the company doing the stalking on behalf of the government will be profiting from the stalking and will not want to give up that profit, you know. So that's not going to happen. You know, like I said, it's a money grab, and there's more people interested in receiving pay than it is in receiving justice. So they'll do injustice or injustice to receive a pay. You know, this is what we do know about this society. You know, this is, like I said, it's a dog eat dog world in a capitalist society where you would have to capitalize off the next in order for you to get ahead. You know, so this is just one thing that you have to understand. So when you do expose the program, sometimes you're not doing it, you know, to make the people informed, so that they'll be able to safeguard themselves and help tear down the program. Sometimes you're tipping them off and making them want to involve themselves in the program as a potential gang stalker. You know, so that's why you have to be, you know, aware or mindful of what it is you set out to do. You know, and If they try to mount a legal challenge, they will likely have trouble collecting the evidence necessary, particularly as they do not have access to number plates, databases, so cannot prove the identity and nature of employment of the individual stalking them. The only thing that is reported to have a reasonable chance of success is to leave the country. Yeah, but there's also other things that may have a reasonable chance of success, and that is conformity. You know, if you conform to them, you can successfully get out of that program. You know, so that is one thing that I know, is something that would get you successfully out of the program. They probably still monitor you because they monitor everybody. But as far as you feeling the suspicion of being, watched and observed, and singled out and watched and observed, then you would have to conform to something, inside of, whether it's a particular church or religious group or something that can be conformed to. You would have to conform to that, Other than that, then, the chances of success, may be, very slim to none. But I did have, my friend, he was under surveillance, but he was actually losing it here. I believe that they was doing a lot of mind control on him, because a lot of things upset him from, the impending war, a lot of things, and he was a Muslim at a time when Muslims were being targeted, when they was targeting Muslims and stuff, like even those things. You gotta understand, some of us know the reason behind actions of others. So, but he moved to a whole nother country, and like I said, this is how I was able to get the apartment that I'm in, because he left and I took over that apartment. But I'm pretty much sure he was under surveillance. He was under 24/7 watch, because even though he was harmless, he could have been made to act out a certain thing, and sometimes that's the goal in some people, is to make them, go crazy, flip, and, do certain things that's out of their means of doing. So, other effects on the target is powerlessness, self-doubt, lack of trust, loss of faith, respect, annoyance, fear, disappointment, disbelief. In addition to the chronic stress induced by all the questions and the effective restrictions on their liberty, the target will likely feel powerlessness due to a huge power imbalance. The police, the military, large government departments, global companies doing the stalking on behalf of the government departments and supplying literally thousands of stalkers. Local companies being paid to supply real vehicles so they can hide in plain sight. So you got to understand, they supply some people with vehicles and residences close to the target. Mainstream media, local media, all working together against the target. Wow. So that is a sense of powerlessness, having all that mounted up against you. For me, it has the adverse effect. It's like, yo, son, they go through all that, how powerful I am, for all of this to, transpire. You like, not that you're an arrogant person, or that you would even want to be an arrogant person, but do you know what all that entails, what it means for, all of that to happen. How many people you are actually employing. Self-doubt. Have I actually done something wrong? So you start to question yourself. What did I do? What's going on? Why are they, this would all contribute to self-doubt. Then you have the lack of trust. Are the people close to me real, or are they covert human information sources employed by the government? We call them human information sources, employed by the government, which most likely they are, which most likely they are. If they're not you, they are one of them, which are covert human information sources, information. They're information. Loss of faith and respect in authority. That's one thing that I did. I have no more faith in authority or respect for them. Not that you're disrespectful, but when I was assaulted by the state troopers at one point in time, and it was on camera that they assaulted me, and I went through the proper channels, to seek justice, and to this day they haven't got back to me. I don't care nothing about no courts or no police officers or none of that, because I already know that if they're not righteous, then there's no way that they can uphold righteousness. If they are about injustice, there's no way that they can uphold justice. So until that has shifted, then I just don't see me even taking law, court, lawyers, judges, any kind of politicians, political figures. I don't take none of them serious. I don't take nobody serious. Anybody that's somebody, I simply don't take them serious. So you have a loss of faith and respect and authority, as it's not being regulated properly and the system is highly fallible. The people in government suffer from double standards, as they wouldn't want it happening to them, but it's okay to do it to other people. They are dishonest about lack of resources in these government departments. They also let people be diagnosed with false mental health diagnoses when they know it is real. The entire form of surveillance is unreasonable. Right. Annoyance at not being able to carry their smartphone around with them. It don't bother me. I like to be without my phone. Fear of further punishment should they speak out about it. I got the spirit of fear, so some of us will speak out about it. So one thing it does take courage. It does take courage, for some of us that really, really experience it, to speak about it, because first and foremost, you're shedding light and exposing those people, their tactics, and then which makes you a bigger target. And then you're also being informed of other things that takes a lot more courage to speak about, because if you wasn't in this program, you wouldn't be privy to certain other information that you stumble across, and then you speak about them. Then you also speak about them. So it does take courage. Like I said, they also have, they're employed targeted individuals that are really gang stalkers in disguise, that are information sources, but are, information sources for them, not for the people. And, they may speak out against it, but, that's not a form of courage. That's a form of cowardice, a form of that's what it is, but it does take courage. Disappointment at the lack of care for the physical and mental health of the target, and particularly the emotional well-being, and also people close to the target who may be indirectly affected. Disbelief at the fact that stalking is meant to be a serious crime, yet the government can do it at infinitum, and that's okay. Feeling of not living in a human society. Automation, bots, zombies, surveillance team members. That's what they call them, zombies, surveillance team members. Large companies, none of which have human emotion or act and can be interfaced with like human beings. So you'll feel as though you are, these people aren't even human. Constantly having to separate truth from fakery, very stressful. One of the reasons why going into nature feels so relaxing, as everything from the sky, stars, moon, trees, and stream are all real. The part of the brain which separates truth from fakery, constantly being activated when being gang stalked, can switch off and the brain can finally relax. The target may also suffer financial losses and hardship. In addition, they may also find it difficult to plan for the future, i.e., if I move, will the stalking stop? If I have children, will they be gang stalked from birth, etc.? So here we have the role of social media. Mainstream media versus social media's portrayal of watch lists. The mainstream media, when discussing watch lists, are likely to portray them as being covert and as having dangerous people, such as terrorists and criminals, on them. That's the mainstream media discussion. Oh, these are, dangerous people. These are terrorists, and criminals. One of the things that you pinpointed before was that when a female was amongst you, she called you a terrorist, and like I told you, I'm a king of peace. I spread peace, and that's just one thing that I do. So no terrorist comes in peace, so this is one thing you have to understand about that. And they want you to be looked at as a criminal and a terrorist, and that goes into when they was doing the ICE raids. They was saying that a lot of the people that they was removing was criminals, which made that gave justification to them creating the ICE raids, and saying that they was, scumbags or whatever. A different side of the story is being told by people on social media, where the stalking and surveillance is not covert but overt, and where the people being stalked are simply regular people, clearly not dangerous criminals. A lot of people on these watch lists have no criminal history whatsoever and are placed on watch lists and stalked for years, even decades. So you have the visibility, covert. This is on mainstream media. They say that it's covert. Social media, it's overt due to the cumulative effect. The people stalked. Mainstream media will tell you that it's dangerous people and hardened criminals. On social media, they'll tell you that it's regular people, no criminal history, and not dangerous. Effect on target. Mainstream media has no effect. On social media, it has devastating effects. Proportionality. On mainstream media, it's proportionate. On social media, it's severely disproportionate. The terminology is also different. The government, through the mainstream media, will refer to things such as surveillance team, surveillance role player, as advertised in job listings. people of interest in directed or targeted surveillance. Individuals through social media will refer to the surveillance teams variously as gang stalkers, i.e., the surveillance team is a gang of stalkers. Perpetrators, zombies, referring to the lack of genuine human emotion and purpose in the people doing the surveillance role play, which make them appear abnormal. Bots, referring to the fact that the surveillance team members are being coordinated by a back-end server. And community-based agents, so this is where you have them as bots or zombies, because they are acting off of a computer base or a back-end server, so that's that. Then you have the media, the mainstream media, group of stalkers, surveillance team, social media, call them gang stalkers. Type of stalking, targeted, directed, surveillance, social media, gang stalking. Individual stalker, a surveillance role player, mobile surveillance op. On social media, they are called gang stalker, perp, zombie, bot, community-based agent, target. A target, it's a person of interest, and social media calls them a targeted individual. So the gang stalking is the social media form of mainstream media social surveillance team. It's the surveillance team, with neighborhood watch and community-based watch operatives, So things commonly pointed out by people being stalked on social media, these are the most common things pointed out on social media by people being gang stalked. Bright teen. Everywhere the target goes, they are being brighted, i.e. illuminated, in order for the surveillance team to get a good image of them. It's common for a car idling with usually very bright headlights on facing the target. One head-lighted vehicles. I don't saw one headlighted vehicles before. Surveillance vehicles are often equipped with toggle switches to switch each headlight on and off. The idea is that the car can be made to look like a different one at night. However, this backfires as the target notices a much higher frequency of these one-headlighters along their journey. Color coordination. The surveillance team will sometimes color coordinate for such as, for example, having all red or white cars or wearing red items of color. Hand signals. Hand signals are used for communication in many industries, from police and military to sports referees. Surveillance teams will use very subtle hand signals to communicate with each other, such as to indicate the position of the target. These hand signals may also be visible when recording the members of the surveillance team with a camera with optical zoom. The same types of vehicles around them, e.g. delivery vehicles or taxis from the same company, motorbikes with L plates, etc. Someone always being near them, despite lots of people, lots of other places and individuals could be in the area. Synchronization with the target. The target can look outside their house and see no one about. As soon as they leave their house, 3 or 4 cars will appear within 30 seconds to a minute near the target. The target can be in a park and see no traffic flow around it. As soon as the target ventures onto the road, they will experience numerous cars synchronizing with them, i.e. driving at the same time, or near them. They will experience cars turning onto the same road the target is on, even when there may be over a dozen other parallel streets available. This becomes highly predictable. The people around them not being local, they will have license plates from another part of the country, and if the target tries to speak to them, they will not have a local accent. Trails of vehicles which sprawl off to different exit points to cover potential exits of the target. Street theater, such as people pretending to be fixing a vehicle near them. Same time entry exit, i.e., members of the surveillance team arriving at a particular location at the same time as the target, then leaving very shortly after the target leaves that location. Subtly taking pictures of the target when their phone continuous traffic around them, even on back streets, a lack of purpose in the people around them. They only ever have a fake purpose for being near the target, not a real one. Components other than surveillance. Stalking and surveillance is the mainstay of gang stalking. However, a significant proportion of people also reported additional effect. These include investigatorial tactics such as fake relations, termed as covert human information sources. That's in UK. That's they send somebody to you to be in a relationship with you to gather information about you, just to be in your life. What here we would call them honey pots or honey traps. Cameras, or that's what they would call them. I'll call them, I don't know what to call them, but that's what they are. Cameras in the house, termed intrusive surveillance in the UK. Interception of communication. Although it may seem highly unlikely, many people also claim to experience things such as experimentation with military technology, such as harassment with energy weapons. This is where you have people talk about the DEWs and stuff like that. The audio spotlight or voice to skull technology. RFID implants, So this is, they say that it's highly unlikely, but you do have people that, claim to have experience with direct energy weapons and also voice to skull technology, And addition, some people report experiencing directed conversations, i.e., members of the surveillance teams having conversations close to the target about private details of the target's life, which they couldn't possibly know unless they had access to private information about that person. Other effects include noise harassment and home break-ins. I may have experienced a home break-in, recently, because they do know when I do go in and out of my home, especially if neighbors are involved. A neighbor would send me to the store, and that is a way to get me out of the house. You don't have a problem with helping people, especially when your neighbor is someone without sight and they're blind and they can't really do for themselves, so you would be assistive to these people, but you are speculative that they may be also engaged in the program. So that's a way for them to get you out of the house, and when you're out of the house, they can put stuff in your drink, in your food, and this is something that you have to be mindful of. And the other day I was missing $40. I was missing $40, whether I miscounted or what, but I was missing $40, and you're not one of these money flossers where you don't know how much money you actually have, but That's neither here nor there. But yeah, I was missing $40. And if they're going to take something, they're not going to take all your money. Then that, all there's somebody just broke in here. But these are things that you would call a black bag job. A black bag job. Let me see if I could. Black bag operations or black bag jobs are covert or clandestine entries into structures to obtain information for human intelligence operation. Some of the tactics, techniques, and procedures associated with black bag operations are lockpicking, safe cracking, key impressions, fingerprinting. So they have, a black bag job. They do have, you know, that is something that's a real thing for you to understand when you do leave your home. There's a way for people to gain entry and access into your home. Another effect on the target may be health effects from night vision goggles, which the surveillance team members may use. These will contain a powerful infrared torch. If this is focused on the target for an extended period, it may be able to impart serious health effects such as eye problems and also heating of the skin. Lack of proper regulation. Watching the watchers. There is lack of proper regulation of the watch list. No one watching the watchers. No time limit. The duration of being surveilled is often exceedingly and disproportionately and unnecessarily long, being years, decades, or even if the parents are under continuous surveillance from birth. No judicial oversight to prevent corruption. No algorithm accountability for algorithms and or predictive policing that result in people being placed on the watch list. No proportionality. Hardened criminals get 18 months surveillance, a terrorist 24 months, yet someone who has no criminal history whatsoever can get left on the watch list for years. No ability to challenge the reasons. No diminishing probabilities, no formal standards, no adherence to policing principles such as challenging the target, opening up a dialogue, and no removal mechanism. Like, how can I get removed from off of this list? What is but like I stated, conformity is, amongst the ways for you to get off of the list. No science into the health effects. There's no study or long-term study of how being placed on a watch list affects a person mentally. They do have cases of I bring that up where they'll talk about Aaron, Alexis, and a few other people that were linked to being gang stalked. But even in those particular cases, I see, there's the link with mass shootings, murders, and attempted murders, and the potential for danger within the society of stalking large amounts of people. It's quite possible that placing potentially dangerous people on watch lists, considering this induces intense and chronic stress, could increase the prevalence of dangerous acts rather than decrease them. So what they're saying is that watching certain people, it can jeopardize them and or jeopardize other people because they're more prone to have a violent outburst to their stalking as opposed to having you can stalk me all you want to. There's people that get um, intense or have chronic stress, and they could lash out violently. No intensity limit, i.e., there could be dozens of people all surrounding and stalking an individual at any one time. No human rights adherence. Liberty, freedom from torture, privacy. They don't adhere to, any of your basic human rights. This is something that they overstep and don't even acknowledge when engaged in the program. Like I said, for some, they're just doing their job. For others, it's basically just something that's server based. So it's not really thinking. It's something that's gathering information. Little law adherence. Part of the problem is that most of the people running the watch list have never been on a watch list themselves, so they have no idea of the devastating effect it has on the targeted individual's life. Then we have the law. Gangstalking constitutes far more than just surveillance, and it has devastating effects on the lives of the people being stalked. Human rights laws are designed to guarantee a basic standard of living in most countries. Of particular interest are the human rights to liberty. Liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life and behavior. The human right to be free from torture. This includes psychological torture. Gangstalking is often described as a form of psychological torture. The human right to respect one's private and family life. Considering the high degree of people being gangstalked, not leaving their own home and or adapting their life significantly due to the distress caused, and also the fact that the gangstalking is universally described as torturous, these human rights are being contravened. The people doing the surveillance seems to have no regard for these laws. One of the main challenges is how the individual being stalked proves what is happening to them in court. In the court of law, they do not have access to number plates database, so they cannot prove, for example, that the cars following them and surrounding them are not local and or they are owned by people who work for the same company. They are also up against so many forces in the government, police, military, other big government departments such as global companies, like local companies, and the mainstream and local media. It is difficult for someone to put themselves up against such power, and it would deplete the individual's resources such as time, money, etc. It's also very hypocritical when the government takes stalking so seriously when an individual does it with potentially up to 10 years in prison, yet when they do it continuously for years, it's considered okay. The link with mass shootings. Gang stalking has been linked with an ever-increasing number of retaliatory mass shootings and attempted murders, such as the most notable examples being Myron May, Aaron Alexis, Everton Brown, and Gavin Long. So I went to go check out those particular cases, and you will see here, you have them giving you details about Aaron Alexis, and you can go and check that out yourself. But that was the Navy Yard shooting, so they were saying that was kind of linked to gang stalking, but I beg to differ. And but all these particular cases you can go and check out, but that would never be a rational person's response to the program. Especially if you're rational, if you would see that there's, if it's systematic, each and every system can be systematically dismantled. You know, you can dismantle a system, and you have to fight them intellectually. You have to fight with more intelligence. So this is the only, means of combating a system that's sent to, gather and gain information or intel about a person. So you have to gather and gain intel about the system. So this is the way that it's meant to be combated, intellectually, not physically. You don't take out a person that, or people, or even a system that is violent with violence, because you become violent as well. But you take a system out that gathers intelligence through intelligence. Other uses of the term. Other organizations which are reported to gangstalk people include Scientologists, Freemasons, and private companies which can be paid solely to harass people or someone, and harassment from the company that someone works for or used to work for. The term gangstalking is also increasingly being used on social media to refer to things such as workplace mobbing, family issues, or people just being nosy about other people's lives. So popular culture, notable. These are videos that you can go and watch on YouTube, and yeah, The Nightmare World of Gangstalking, the documentary Marker Vice meets up with victims of gangstalking and those who think it is a delusion. Why are we gangstalking you? To keep you out of jail. A description of an outreach program. A police officer in the video says, once they grab onto you, they don't let go. The presenter jokes, we roam the streets. We call what we do relentless outreach. It is really stalking, but that is not legal. They are also running a pay-for-success contract with investors. So the pay-for-success contract, which, any and everybody would be involved in that want to be successful in some form. This is why you have homeless people, and, for them success is a decent meal. For a drug addict would be the supplyment of that drug, whatever drug they're on. So these are people that can be used in the program, because these are people that want, success, pay for success, So what are you willing to give us in order to get this, So turning the tide on police surveillance discusses predictive policing, Stingray, ALPR, automatic license plate readers, and other technologies. The lack of no knowledge and input from the general public on the use of these technologies and the threat to civil rights and liberties. Also discusses how some communities are empowering themselves and turning the tide on these forms of surveillance. You got the movies, you got the Truman Show, being gangstalked is often linked to being in the Truman Show, the difference being that a targeted individual will experience an interweaving of real and fake people, and stalking and surveillance is ostensibly for the purpose of government surveillance rather than for entertainment. Songs, we're the gangstalkers, we are the gangstalkers. This is Rusty Cage. Features the lyrics, we're the gangstalkers, buddy, and we're everywhere. When you see a gangstalker, then you better beware. We follow you around in our bright red cars. We're all gangstalkers, and we know where you are. Then you also have Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell, featuring a sample from Michael Jackson that features, "I always feel like somebody's watching me and I have no privacy," alluding to the possibility of having cameras in the house. This is followed by, "Are the neighbors watching me? Who's watching? Well, is the mailman watching me? Tell me who's watching." So this is just what it is. You know, that's just what it is. So, but this is the appendix. How to temporarily evade surveillance teams. And they'll tell you, in order to gain some temporary relief from the stalking, the target can leave their phone at home, so they have to be tracked manually. They can then at night travel towards the nearest forest, wooded area, or cemetery and enter it. For example, in between surveillance cars passing them, the surveillance team will not know where they have gone, and the whole mechanism of bite-sized stalking breaks down. Although most people will understandably be scared of the forest at night, this can become a regular occurrence for the target, and the forest can become like a second home. It's the only time they can be in public without being stalked. They will come to realize there are very few humans in the forest at night, and the animals are either up in the trees or if on the ground away from the trails. This is far from a long-term solution, but can offer immense and necessary relief from the constant stalking. It can act as a pressure value and allow the target to clear their head and relax. The immense relief experiences due in part to the brain no longer continuously having to separate truth from fakery. The moon, the sky, the stars, the trees, and the streams are all real. If the forest is big enough, they are likely to find lots of interesting hangout places in and around the forest that they never knew existed. The target can also leave the forest at a random time and place. When they do this, they will be temporarily free from the surveillance and can sample what it is like to walk through a street again without being stalked. It may be that they can get from 30 minutes up to a couple of hours before they are spotted and picked up by the surveillance team again. Carrying a torch. A torch is needed in the forest, particularly if there is little light from the moon. However, by using a torch, normally it may give away the target's position in the forest. A torch can be dimmed by shining it through a pocket downwards on the trail. This amount of light is enough to light up the trails, but will probably not be enough to give away the target's position. The torch can be hung from a trouser or a bum bag belt to ensure it doesn't get lost. Health and safety. It is recommended to take adequate water, such as in hydration, bladder, rucksack, as many liters of fluid can be lost when hiking trails. If one is doubling up walking the trails as a weight loss fitness program, it is advisable also to take seriously foot care so as not to develop blisters. Adhesive dressing can be placed on parts of the foot prone to blistering. Rotation of footwear to alter the pressure and friction on the foot can also prevent blisters. Other safety concerns are low-hanging branches, which can poke an individual in the eye or catch them on the eyelid, particularly if trying to be economical with the torch. Slipping when the ground and tree roots are wet, and being on the trail, which is up high. Response of the surveillance team. Eventually, the surveillance team will figure out that the target is going into the forest. Once they do, they may send a scooter around the trails of the forest or a group of walkers with a torch soon after the target enters the forest. They may also park cars with motion detectors at the entrances or set up other forms of motion detectors at these areas so they get notified when an individual and therefore probably the target exit that location. You know, so alternatives to the forest: if the target cannot get to a forest, they could instead find hiding places within the city simply by walking around at night. They may find avenues which lead to various places that they can spend time in without being stalked. This can include car parks, playing fields, small wooded areas, and stairwells. Spontaneity, creativity, and unpredictability play a role here in avoiding the surveillance team. Stone walls, and stair walls are good temporary places to hide, and they offer an obstacle to night vision and thermal cameras, which might be being used by the surveillance team. Adding in a wait of 30 minutes can make a surveillance team spend this time looking for the target and eventually giving up, which can help shake the surveillance team. Walking through a new housing estate can also make it difficult for surveillance team, as their mapping system on this app is wrong. Of course, these measures may make the target look suspicious to other people, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of choices in terms of getting rid of the surveillance team in the short term. CCTV cameras. It is also necessary to become aware of where the publicly run CCTV cameras are located in the area. This may be publicly available information. If they travel past these publicly run CCTV cameras, they will be picked up again by the surveillance team. So there you have, that was shared, for them to explain gang stalking in a manual form, that is downloadable in PDF. I believe that you can go and get you a form of it, and like I said, there's more information that can be gathered, but who is the information beneficial to? Is it more beneficial to those that may be under surveillance, or those that want to gain in on the surveillance? So sometimes being informed puts you in formation, as well. When you're informed, you're in formation as well. So that's gang stalking 101. Information. On gang stalking being explained, in those that are in formation or in align with the gang stalking program. So I wanted to share that because we had people that was giving us information contrary to your information, which again, that was a form of gaslighting. We don't want to bring in narcissism with that, but that's narcissism too. Even for them to state that, narcissism isn't a form of gang stalking, then it can be used by narcissistic people to believe that they are actually being watched when nobody's really watching them. So narcissism would fall in the line of gang stalking, because they would use them to give you certain understanding about the program. And gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where a person causes someone to question their sanity, memories, or perception of reality. So when we go back to um, you know, even, first day, anybody talking about religious spirituality and blah, blah, you're fake or you're lying. And even here, you know, where they tell you that anyone with mixed gang stalking and religious like they're lying. So, you know, their whole objective is to question, you know, your reality. So when you do go back and you look at the comment, this is, someone that's, someone telling you that it's not spiritual. Gang stalking is not spiritual. It is Zetsursung, mind control, and DEWs. Period. That's it. So they tend to, make you question, yourself, your reality. So when you do want to go and see what Zetsursung is, this is something that somebody had to research themselves. So when we're talking about Germany, it was a psychological warfare tactic used by ministry for states to repress political opponents in East Germany. So it's Zetsursung, which, but that's what you would call somebody that's either, they're, giving you insight, which if that was insight, they would have had a response to this particular comment. We would have corresponded with each other. We would have been corresponding back and forth, and you give me insight, I give you insight. But this was somebody just to come and shut you down. But then, when you look at the name, I see the 3 in the name and another 3 and then 9, which is 3 threes. So when I see 3 in names, I associate them with, Freemasonry, and Eastern Stars. That's what I do. When I see somebody name, if their name is Sweet and they spell their name SW33T, it's just something that I just do. I look at them as, part of them. Like I said, if they was me, they'd be like me. If they was one of me, they'd be one of me. But if they're one of them, they're one of them. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because, like I said, depending on our experiences, we'll have different interpretations of it. But and that's cool that you was able to pull this guy who is completely not that guy, who is not that person, and say that, son, don't y'all say the same exact thing? Ain't y'all saying the same exact thing? Why are y'all both saying the same exact thing? Do y'all know each other? Are y'all in the same thing? Are y'all in the same cult? Are y'all Freemasons? Who are y'all? Who sent y'all? This is just something that you gotta be real, skeptical about when you're dealing with this program. Like I said, you're that important for them to have payrolls and payrolls of people with seems like resources that are, infinite. But they'll tell you that anyone who mixed gang stalking with religious / spirituality, they're lying to you. Anybody that talks about religion, spiritualism is fake and lying to you. Do y'all know each other? Y'all know each other? Nah, y'all don't know each other. This ain't the same page, is it? Nah, that's real Talon Godfrey. This is gang stalking reality. It's gang stalking reality. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. because it needed to be shared. So, yeah. No, I got more. So, you know, I got a couple of other things that I wanted to show y'all, but this is being a little bit too extensive. So I'm gonna um, give it to y'all another time. So peace.